Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to take you through a few quick slides and we'll jump into the meat of the webinar. We are going to do some quick intros on the presenters today, review the questions that you have all submitted, and then, if time permits, address any additional questions that pop up. About the presenters, like Marissa said, I'm Marcy Newell. I'm an Executive Vice President here, and I head up the sales organization. Been in sales for about 20 years, and I've been at Tier 1 since 2007. Craig?
Yeah, thanks, Marcy. My name is Craig Krouse. I am the President, Chief Operating Officer here at Tier 1. Joined Tier 1 shortly after Marcy in the same year. And my role here is to oversee the execution and delivery of all of our services. Started out with Tier 1 way back when. EBS developer, had some DBA experience prior to joining Tier 1. And today, I am where I am, just making sure we're doing everything we're supposed to. Geordie?
Hi there, good afternoon. I'm Geordie Coates. I'm the Director of DBA Services. I joined Tier 1 back in 2019. I've been architecting, supporting, and delivering Oracle projects, hosting, and management services for over 25 years. I've got a team of talented Tier 1 DBAs from multiple geographical locations across the globe, with each of them having over about 15 years of Oracle support experience.
Thanks, guys. So a few quick items on Tier 1 before we get started. For those of you who don't know us, we are an Oracle partner. We focus exclusively 100% on Oracle products, eBusiness Suite, Hyperion, as well as EPM Cloud and ERP Cloud. And around these products, we provide full lifecycle solutions, implementations, upgrades. We provide 24/7 managed services for DBA, technical developer, and functional support. We also have a private cloud here at Tier 1 where we can host your Oracle applications, databases, and operating systems. We are based in Pittsburgh and have been in business since 2003. And one of the biggest things that separates us from other organizations is the length of experience that our consultants have. We don't hire anybody with less than 10 years of experience in their respective Oracle discipline. Moving on, while we've been successful, there's tons of companies out there that do what we do. If you've ever been to an Oracle trade show like Open World or Collaborate and walked through the presentation hall, you've likely been overwhelmed with all of the kiosks and booths. But these are some snippets that we believe sets us apart from the rest of the partner network out there. So if you start with me in the top right-hand corner, you'll see that we're not too big, we're not too small, we're kind of in that sweet spot. We have about 60 employees across the U.S. And our employees, our consultants, have been an extension of many customers. Help desks and support staff. Many of our folks have been supporting the same customers and the same individuals for 10 plus years. So we really care and really dig into those personal relationships. Moving across clockwise, you'll see that we provide a customized approach. So we're a consulting company. We're not going to try to sell you a one-size-fits-all solution for whatever you're looking for. We're going to have multiple conversations with you to uncover your requirements, and we're going to customize that to best fit what you're looking for. For example, today we're talking about an upgrade. If you just need some assistance with your functional testing, or maybe you just need help through the first test upgrade, we're not going to hold back and tell you that's not what we do. We're going to match whatever you need with our services to make it a win on both sides. We're not just going after the large, big deal out there. We are very flexible and customized to meet whatever you're looking for. Moving down, our senior executives are very involved with all of our relationships and sales cycles here at Tier 1. Craig introduced himself earlier. He's our COO. Everybody that touches a keyboard eventually rolls up to him through a network of other directors. But if we're lucky enough to talk to you folks about an upgrade after this webinar, Craig will be on that phone call talking to you one-on-one, and you'll get to know him. Our CEO, Rob Gudarelli, will also get involved as well. He will give you his cell phone number and give you his personal guarantee that he wants to make sure that this partnership is a win-win. So our executives are all very involved every step of the way. And then lastly, in the corner there, something we're most proud of is our employee retention. Excuse me. Over a third of our folks have been here for over 10 years, which in this day and age is pretty crazy, especially for IT and consulting. So when you marry those two up, it's a pretty impressive statistic. And all four of these bubbles lead us to what's in the middle there. We're very proud that we have had an excess of 90% customer retention since 2003 when we were founded. Just a quick bit of information on Tier 1, and that's going to lead us to our first couple of questions. Excuse me. We asked you all to submit questions before you join, and we do appreciate that. One of the most frequent questions that we saw was, why should I be doing this? The buzzwords are out there. We need to upgrade. Talk to me about why this needs to happen. This also marries up with a second question that we had. Talk to us about what Oracle is recommending for eBusiness Suite in the next 2 to 5 years. So Craig, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Marcy. So I think the first thing I'd like to talk about as we get into why do I upgrade is to refer to Oracle's term continuous innovation. So I snapped the graphic that Oracle has provided and displayed it here for you if you've not seen it before. It's really a pretty nice graphic, kind of illustrating when the release of 12.2 all the way back in 2013 to where we are today. And you'll see that although it used to be, more driven by major updates, the path forward, beginning really in 12.2.8, is to be more on the continuous innovation where you're releasing smaller update packs along the way. You can expect to see things in the fall and spring. In the fall, you're going to see the dot releases for EBS, and then in the springtime, you're going to see some of the ECC updates that you can see at the bottom. So for those of you new to 12.2 functionality, ECC stands for the Enterprise Command Centers. They release them biannually, which means you're going to get a release with the dot release of EBS with updates as well as one in the spring. So we just had one recently in March. And to dive a little further into the ECC world, we're going to segue right here into this slide, which really it's what is Enterprise Command Centers? So in simplistic terms, it is out-of-the-box content delivered by Oracle to give you the ability to have drill-down capability into the transactions in EBS. So think of it more about dashboards, key performance indicators sitting on top of your EBS environment, where you can go to a chart or a report and you can click on an item of interest and drill down right all the way back into EBS form. It's a very nice addition to EBS, available only in 12.2.4 and later versions. So for those of you in 12.1.3, they're not going to backport this, kind of like we did back in the day for mobile apps. And as of our conversation today, there are over 31 command centers. Actually, there are 31 command centers with over 110 role-based dashboards. And they cover the gamut from financials to order management, asset lifecycle, procurement, projects, flavors of manufacturing, as well as the human capital management. The best feature about Enterprise Command Centers is that they are free to those who are licensed for EBS. You can download them as a patch. Oracle does recommend that you install them on a separate server. But they're tightly integrated with EBS, and you can be up and running with dashboarding relatively quickly. So it's a very nice feature in addition to 12.2. With that said, to take advantage of continuous innovation, as well as the Enterprise Command Centers, you really need to make sure you're maintaining your current support, which is kind of driving a lot of the upgrade cycles that we're seeing in the last year and this year. With that said, I'll turn it over to Geordie. You can kind of talk us through kind of the benefits of why you would be on support in addition to just having the availability to take advantage of the command centers. Geordie?
All right. Thank you, Craig. Kind of just as Craig had alluded to on the innovation slide, one of the main reasons you want to consider moving forward is, starting the upper left-hand side, as Craig had mentioned, Premier support for 12.1 kind of ends in December 2021. So while support for 12.2 takes you basically to 2032. So up to this point, as Craig alluded on another slide, Oracle's been kind of releasing cumulative patches in the fall every year, and we've been staying kind of abreast. So some customers like to stay in an N-1 type approach. We have been pushing out 12.2.10 for a lot of our customers, and that's kind of what we're staying focused on. On the upper right hand, obviously one of the other main reasons with all the day-to-day demands to keep your applications up and running, it's been a challenge to schedule the often required downtime to implement all the necessary patches that Oracle continually releases, the certifications with third-party versions, new tax, legal, regulatory updates. So as of 12.2, Oracle implemented like the online patching, which will help ease the pain of trying to keep yourself and your maintenance downtimes going forward. Much easier to keep yourself patched. Although EBS 12.2, kind of in the bottom right, although EBS 12.2 is still supported on earlier versions of the OS, since you're still going to have to install a new EBS tech stack or database tech stack as well, now is the ideal time to consider upgrading your infrastructure, take advantage of it, your operating system platforms, try and get to the latest and greatest, take advantage of what's released at the OS level and new infrastructure. And like I said, in addition, it might be the right time to prepare for your database upgrades if you've not done so already. And finally, lastly, the upgrade will ensure you stay with the latest functionality, efficiencies, security, and technologies available. In turn, this will also make it an easier migration to cloud technologies where a lot of people are going, including our own tier 1 clouds. It makes it an easier migration when you've kept yourself up to date on the application tech stack. So moving ahead. So we've received a few questions on what changes, what should we expect when you kind of move to 12.2? What are the key drivers that or differences you'll see when you come to 12.2?
Thank you, Geordie. So why don't you cover that as we go into the next slide, and then we'll keep going through the deck.
All right. Thanks, Craig. So although there's a lot of newer functionality, the underlying technology changes are really the biggest heavily apparent things that we notice with 12.2 releases. WebLogic Server is a replacement for the Oracle application server used in earlier releases. IAS is no longer available. Now you basically have a Fusion middleware Oracle home to manage most of your primary core EBS middle tier code, your web services, and your forms functionality. In addition, Oracle implemented a new multi-file system layout and enhanced database architecture, leveraging edition-based redefinition feature to allow for online patching functionality. So even with these new architecture features, we've not seen as part of our upgrade that you require substantial additional database storage, to accommodate the new architecture. Generally, the gains and losses during the upgrade seem to cover a great deal, but a great deal of it. But you might want to still plan some minimal growth, maybe 10 to 20 gigs at the database level. Like all things Oracle, if you can accommodate additional memory, I suggest you try and bump it up. More memory, no licensing cost, good idea to bump up the extra memory on the front end. Application tiers will require the most growth to accommodate the additional file system structure. So you might just want to assume that you might have to double up what you need for storage on the application tier. Lastly, of course, the most anticipated and primary key new feature of Release 12.2 is the switch to online patching. It provides you the ability to apply patches while the system's actively being used by your business. So in future upcoming slides, we'll discuss, in the next slide actually, we'll discuss some additional questions we have around these features and what you gain out of it. Next slide, Craig, please. Thank you. As we're all very familiar with the architecture and file system structure of our current releases, 12.1, 11.5, 10, if you're still there, with 12.2, big changes were adopted to meet the online patching functionality. It was probably one of the biggest focus changes you see as part of 12.2. Now you have a dual file system structure on the application tier. One is the run or active file system, and the second one is the patch file system, used solely for the patching process. Each are a duplicate of the other with their own instance, middleware, common, and Appletop structure. In addition, there is a non-edition file system that stores shared logs, and files used by both the run and the patch edition. Similarly, on the database tier, Oracle's leveraged edition-based redefinition to maintain a separate copy of all database objects that are changed during an online patching cycle. As a result of the file system and database changes, customizations really need to be reviewed. They need to be registered and configured to ensure compliance and functionality during the patching process, so as to ensure both file systems and database editions are kept in sync. If not, when you flip back and forth during the patch cycle, you could lose the functionality of your customizations. All right, so as of 12.2, obviously this is probably one of the biggest things that everyone was looking forward to with 12.2. As of 12.2, the AD patch is no longer, AD patch is no longer available, and it's been replaced by the AD online patching tool, or ADOP. When you start your upgrade, the reason we kind of bring this up, when you start your upgrade, you're going to continue to use AD patch. So as part of the upgrade, you'll start with AD patch, you'll do your patching as you normally would for 12.1.3 or 11.5.10, and then you're going to flip as you get to 12.2, you're going to enable online patching as part of that process and proceed with the remaining patching using that new functionality. So it's best to have a reasonable understanding of how ADOP works prior to starting your upgrade. You need to use both. So with AD online patching, during a normal online patching cycle, each patch will follow through these 5 phases with the system completely available to the user during all of those phases, except for the cutover phase. Something to be aware of, although not recommended under normal circumstances, Oracle has provided an option to completely bypass the online patching cycle. So if you really want to bypass this and do it the old way, you can apply the patch in downtime mode. This approach will run a little quicker, but it does require system downtime to apply. And the only reason I bring this up is that so you're aware that as part of your final upgrades to get to 12.2.10, so once you hit 12.2 and you're going to 12.2.10, you will be applying all the remaining patches in downtime mode. In addition, once you start a patch cycle, until you have finished all phases in your patch cycle, it's best not to make any changes in your run file systems, as they could be overwritten during the cutover phase. So, end result is there are a lot of features and options available with ADOP, and you really should become familiar with extensive documentation out there, familiar with all the phases that you should be aware of with regards to running ADOP and up before starting with the upgrade. All right, Craig.
Thank you, Geordie. That's great information. Thank you very much. So the next question that we have is, what does the typical upgrade actually look like? And I'm going to ask Craig Krouse to address this for us.
Yeah, thank you, Marcy, and thank you, Geordie, as well. So when we go into an Oracle EBS upgrade, what we've done for the last 17 years is we've followed the Oracle methodology, formerly known as AIM, but it's now referred to as Unified Method. It involves multiple iterations of the upgrade, and it starts with an initial database upgrade and an EBS upgrade test. So we first go through the initial database upgrade, and in doing so, we document all issues, patches, and workarounds required to successfully upgrade the instance. In doing so, we go through what's called a conference room pilot 1 release of release 12.2, in which case we identify and document any of the configuration decisions that were required based on existing functionality. It helps familiarize the project team with any of the new functionality, and it documents all configuration decisions for upgrade. So for those of you on the call who are familiar with the previous versions of Oracle, let's say 11.5.10 and earlier, when you made the upgrade to 12.1, it was a pretty big leap functionally. You had subledger accounting, you had the introduction of the payments module where you're separating out payables, and you had a lot of changes on the code base that blew up a lot of customizations to be performed. There's not a large lift and shift from that perspective going from 12.1 to 12.2, as it's primarily the technical upgrade to get you to online patching. But with that said, you still have to do the due diligence of going through the multiple iterations and validating all of your existing and standard functionality is working. Now you'll see on the end of this slide, what we like to do as well during CRP1 in parallel is begin the update and testing of any customizations and extensions. So once we get through upgrade test 1, then that leads us to upgrade test 2, where we're going to repeat the process from start to finish. We're going to update our documentation and timings, and we're going to go through in a little more detail the testing plan for CRP2. So that involves both standard functionality as well as any of the customizations that were being remediated to be compliant with 12.2 during the CRP1 cycle. During this stage, we'll also continue to update and test any customizations that weren't ready for prime time for CRP2. One of the things we like to do here at Tier 1 is sit with our customers and understand from a customization perspective, are there any out there that are critical that the business relies on and prioritize to make sure we're getting the critical ones in place and remediated and tested first. And then any of the little smaller ones, maybe not as significant toward the end, just in case there's any impact to schedule that we can continue to work on those while we're completing CRP2. Completion of CRP2 leads to what we refer to as user acceptance tests. In some cases, depending on the size of the organization, it would involve a completely new set of users, and we're expanding the testing out to more of your day-to-day users of the system. And some of the mid-sized to smaller organizations, those folks have already participated in both CRP1 and CRP2, so it just becomes a final dress rehearsal for that last upgrade test. The goal of the UAT, as we like to call it, is for sign-off for production. So we've documented all the issues that we've encountered in both CRP1, CRP2. We've categorized them, we've addressed them, we've retested them, and that leads us to UAT, where it is the final push before we go into the transition to production. For the production upgrade, starting at the 1 o'clock section here, if we're pretending this is a clock face, we're going to initiate a production outage period where we execute our documented transition plan. So sometime during CRP2, our project manager will be working with our customers to lay out the schedule. Well, at that point, we'll know the outage window. And what the outage window means is, when you go live in an upgrade, you have to essentially shut down your current environment, and it remains down and unavailable until we are live on the upgraded version. So we want to make sure when the lights go out, we have a transition plan that we're following that adheres to our customers' needs and contains a level of detail so we can track through the process. Over typically a long weekend, sometimes we take advantage of Memorial Days, 4th of July, Thanksgivings, to get that extra business day to try to limit the interruption to the operations. We also follow our technical upgrade steps and functional configuration steps that need to occur post-upgrade. And then when they're all done, then we do a little bit of what we call litmus testing, where we're going to do some pre-production functional testing to make sure the results are what we were expecting once we turn the system back on, and then followed by a period called go live. If you want to look at this more from a timeline perspective, we put together what looks like a typical upgrade, starting at the beginning with an initial test upgrade that ends with CRP1, followed by a second test upgrade with a CRP2 into a UAT, followed by post-go live support. A lot of the folks in our space typically can do this project in a 4 to 6 month time period, with the norm being 6 months to accommodate period close activities that will take people who are required to participate in the testing cycles away from the project because they have to rely and do their day jobs. Okay, so Marcy, back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Craig. So the final question that was submitted is right in front of you on your screen. What does Oracle do to prep us for this? And I'm going to turn this over to, I believe, Geordie. Or Craig, am I turning it over to you?
Yeah, I think this is me, Marcy.
Okay, very good.
So although there are some database components to this, I can talk to them and Geordie can add some color commentary if I leave anything short. But unlike the previous upgrades with Oracle, and I referred back to the days 11.5, 10, or 11i, we kind of went into the upgrade blind. There was a couple third-party products that were developed. One was Panaya that was supposed to help people understand from a customization perspective what they needed to do to get their customizations in compliance with 12.1. Oracle kind of took the lead in developing a product on their own that they include in the form of patches that can be run in your current environment to give you a picture of what you need to do and what lies ahead whenever you begin the upgrade process. We're going to start at the top there. The first one would be a set of reports called Online Patching Readiness. And they really validate the edition-based redefinition compliance. They identify what needs to be done from both a runtime, which we also refer to as minimal, versus full compliance, and how to provide remediation as appropriate. So I mentioned, two terms there that I don't think we've touched upon yet in this webinar. The runtime, and really what it is, it's the minimal compliance requirements so that your environment will successfully achieve online patching. The second is called full compliance, in which case any customizations that you're going to provide in your system post 12.2 will be delivered in the form of a patch that would be applied during the online patching cycle. So there's really a decision to be made going into the upgrade on how you want to apply customizations moving forward or migrate them through your non-production into production. The second set of utilities we refer to as the online patching standards compliance, which ensures that all of your customization standards will work, or at least it defines what needs to be done in both runtime and full, followed by the last, which is a database and file system standards checker. So the DBCC for the database scans the database, whereas the GSCC works on the file system to identify any source files that violate the standard. So if you have any shell scripting or anything out there in the application tier, in your custom schemas, XXTop, so to speak, then we'll look at those as well and tell you what you need to do with them. That's kind of a high-level overview of the utilities. So back to you, Marcy.
Okay. So I'm going to ask for a last call for any additional questions. We do have one that came through. Craig, if you could address this, can this upgrade be completed remotely?
Well, that's a great question considering the timing, Marcy. I know that a lot of us are looking forward to climbing back out of the pandemic world and into what we refer to as a life of normalcy. So a lot of the upgrades that we've done over the last 17 years have involved some sort of on-site presence with our business analysts or functional resources, as we like to call them, working with the users, understanding the processes, in some cases defining and developing test scripts to be used in the various test iterations. But what we've learned as recent as last year in March, when we just had completed a kickoff of 12.2 upgrade, is that yes, we can effectively deliver this upgrade completely remotely. And that's through leveraging tools such as Zoom meetings, Microsoft Teams, where we can have some interface with our users, intimately looking at the same screen together. We're no longer rubbing shoulders together, looking at a monitor, but we're sharing a screen and interacting and getting the information we need from them to effectively deliver.
Great. Thank you, Craig. And that takes us to the end of our 30 minutes. We appreciate you all joining, and on your screen you will see information on how to contact Tier 1. You will receive a recording of this webinar shortly. Please feel free to reach out to the email address above with any additional questions. Thank you so much for joining.